What's going on, boys? Thanks to our patrons and Fiverr customers, subscribe to our Patreon free for behind the scenes stuff. Arm yourselves, life stuff. We're in a strange emotional spot. It's hitting clearest now, but I've noticed over the last maybe 2 weeks, many of the games you play with yourself have been melting and dripping off the canvas. The shit you tell yourself you care about, but on some level you know you don't. Until all you're left with are the aspects of your life or the feelings that are self evident. The ones you don't need to convince yourself of. And we're familiar with the you aren't supposed to be here feeling. We talk about that sometimes, but this time you're left with a different perspective on that same feeling. And the way you'd word it this time is not, you are not supposed to be here. It is, there isn't a place for you here. And that perspective on that feeling or that wording feels a lot more accurate. Because you aren't supposed to be here. I don't know how to word it, but there's this idea there is another place you are supposed to be. But with there is no place for you here, the emphasis or the way it feels is this is the only place and there isn't a place for you in this place. And that framing forces you to think about where you are and what you are, instead of permitting you to think about other places you might be. Why do you play the games you do? Whether they are spiritual, political, social, egotistical, the ego crafting sense. I think you do it because you know there's no place for you here. And these games are designed to make you feel like if there is not a place built for you here, then you could at least build your own place here. And that's probably why, on some level, you know 99% of anything you say or think or feel is nonsense. It's bullshit. They're all reactions to the knowledge you are trespassing. You're a stowaway on the life voyage. And that's why your truest feelings are bad in nature. The sadness of not having a place, not having a reserved seat on this voyage, the fear you'll be thrown off, not even not having a seat, but what little you have being taken from you, hatred for the people trying to sniff you out, and resentment for the people who do have reserved seats, who don't have to live like this or feel like this. And among these feelings, there is that drive, but when you melt it back, it's not this drive to get a seat or to make a seat, because you know neither of those things is going to happen. It's this drive, in some vague sense, to stick it to the entire concept of this voyage. And that self-evident feeling compounds all the other bad ones, because you know there's no way for you to. All you have is an existence you are not supposed to have. And the metaphor breaks down because it isn't really a voyage. There isn't a beginning or a before, and there isn't a destination or an end. At least not in any ways we can conceive of. And this clarity got me thinking about the way life unravels, or the way life unfolds, I should say, with a little more clarity than usual. What does it mean to live your entire life without a place? What does that look like? I've been thinking about the way I've been living, and one of the reasons I don't know if there's a word for it, the way you are uneasily existing, tightrope walking. I'm becoming sharper, developing experience, but it doesn't mean anything because I'm not going anywhere. I don't have a place, physically or metaphorically, to dig in and fortify. There's also no place to go. You're becoming a more effective human being, but continuing to exist on the exact same level in the exact same way. And I realized this has been going on for a few years now, subsisting with no major positive forward moving changes. And not for lack of trying, existence has decided on the stage, this is where you are to stand. For how long? Who knows? Maybe forever. And you'd better be thankful for it, because at any moment, this one spot that you are treading water, keeping your head above water, could be taken away from you. These last few years have passed in a split second. How quickly will the rest of your life pass? And how are you going to feel about it as you get older? You're supposed to seize the world while you're young and strong, but you aren't allowed to do that. At least not in the strong monkey sense. You're denied the strength you're born with while you're young, while you have it, and then once you're old and you no longer have it, that strength will be wielded on you. And even if you were to try to wield your strength as a young chimp, you're going to get mobbed by a bunch of other chimps and thrown off the ship. How long are you willing to put up with this humiliation? But phrasing it that way makes it sound like you can make a decision and change this, and you can't. And quick tangent before I forget, I hate people, I despise people who think any problem can be solved with adequate effort and strategy. That's not the case. You think that's the case because you need to think that's the case. You're too weak to handle the horror of the reality life can and will do what it wants with you. If life decides it's time to fuck you, no amount of positive self-talk and motivation and Jesus Christ, whatever other pacifiers you come up with are going to save you. And I take great pleasure in knowing if you haven't learned that lesson yet, you will. And the real question we're getting to isn't even how long can you put up with this, implying suicide or something. You aren't going to do that either. You're too much of a pussy for that. I think the fundamental question of your life, or one of the fundamental questions, is how do you feel knowing these are the conditions you'll live out the rest of your life under? As a stowaway. As someone who has no place for them here. And you already have the answers because they are self-evident to you right now. Sad, scared, angry, resentful, and driven towards something that doesn't exist. And thinking about this, are you really driven? Or is this just a pointed dissatisfaction? The idea, someone proposed it a long time ago. I think it's an official thing, but this idea of hell being a box you are trapped in eternally, in which you can't fully stand up and you can't fully lie down or sit down. That's probably exactly what this is. It is eternal discomfort. The shuffling around and trying to get comfortable in a situation you cannot get comfortable. That's why you come up with all these goals, these ideas, these systems, these plans, your hopes and dreams, You know on some level they're bullshit. They're designed, you're designing them for yourself to distract you and to give you something to hope for, but you'll never have any of them. You'll never make sense of anything. You'll never have your place. You are shifting around trying to get comfortable. And you know they're bullshit because you are not getting comfortable. Do you think you'll have children? Well, you either don't have children and you deny yourself an entire sect of life that is supposed to be game changing, but is it? For you, a person without a place here, would it be? So let's say you do have children. Shit. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's not joy for you. And if you're going to have children, should you be thinking about what does this mean for you level? You should be thinking about your children. And based on life, the life you're living, the ship you're on, is this something you want to inflict on your children? Do you want to find your soulmate and fall in love? Betrayal. I've been thinking about it. Do you know why betrayal is the worst sin? It's not just that it feels so terrible to be betrayed, that it's so destructive when you do betray. It's all these horrible things. I think it's also that betrayal is the most natural sin a human can commit. This atomic bomb of evil comes as naturally to us as breathing does. And we'll act like we don't betray, but we do constantly, but we excuse it. We excuse ourselves by rationalizing. But rationalizing doesn't undo what you've done. Do you think the sort of love you want and that you should be able to provide, or should be provided, do you think that actually exists? It doesn't. Are you satisfied with a poor approximation, a Chinese knockoff, and or with the understanding you'll be spending the rest of your life, if you bother to try to spend the rest of your life, convincing yourself it's this real idealized thing? And maybe you try to be tough about it and remove these warmer ideas, these warmer dreams, hopes, and look at love from a more practical level. Is that practical level enough for you? I don't think it is. I think that's the most realistic way to work it, but that's not enough. You can make it work, but that's not enough. And then either you get sniffed out and killed, or you make it to old age like that's an accomplishment, and you die. Death. What does death mean when in your heart of hearts you know nothing good is going to come of this? If there is anything else, it's going to be more of the same. Maybe stated differently, maybe expressed on a higher or lower level, but more of the same. And more commenters than I thought over the last few years have discussed their greatest fears being reincarnation or an eternity of doing the same shit over and over again, which is not exactly what we're talking about, but in terms of feelings, it might as well be. I've never viewed reincarnation or being forced to live your life in loops repeatedly as what's happening or going to happen, has always been happening. And in my gut, I don't feel that's what's happening. But let's say it is, because if whatever comes next, if anything comes next, is more of the same, then it's close enough. What does it mean that we aren't permitted to know other or to remember other? What does it mean that we are forced to live this life or these lives without knowledge of anything else? Is that a mercy? Is it a mercy that you feel these feelings fresh and aren't permitted to know anything about them for absolute certain? Is that why getting closer to them by attuning yourself to these self-evident feelings, is that why that feels this way? Is the truth so bad you can't know it? You're being protected from it with amnesia and limitation. Are we fortunate this is the extent to which we'll know the truth? Some vague, omnipresent, but still permissive to your existence, bad feelings. I have no idea. Lately, my games have been even less satisfying and reassuring than usual. I feel embarrassed about existing. I feel hurt. I feel betrayed in some confusing, pointless, cosmic way, and I feel resigned. This is the peak. This moment right now, today, is the best day you're going to have going forward. You think you feel bad now. Imagine how bad you'll feel at some point in the future when you don't have your health, when you don't have a relatively safe place to sleep, when, with all your unease about your life and your ability to remain secure, you don't even have the smallest padding. That's coming, and when it does, you won't be able to do anything about it. I'm at the point, if I can build my own matrix, I'll be satisfied. If I can build my own simulated place to be, within which I can believe I am supposed to be there, that would be enough. I think the worst part of all this is being able to feel and on some level comprehend the position you're in. We're back to cosmic horror reality. You don't need eldritch gods. Listening to yourself is enough to drive you mad. Why is it like this? How do you feel about it? And how do you feel about the knowledge you can't do anything about it? We'll cut it here. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't.